Howdy team. I'm supposed to be at work, but not. So it's just me in the office this afternoon because Marie is part-time mornings only. Claire is part-time mornings only. And Chloe is now afternoons only, but was in this morning because we had a staff meeting. So nobody knows that I've escaped and I'm walking through the park. So that's why I'm recording this video, so that we can pretend that I'm still at work, right? Here's the thing. I have spoken to a couple of people recently, a couple of practitioners recently, about when you get to that place where your business is doing pretty much what you wanted it to do at the very, very start, but then you've either brought in other modalities or just other stuff that you're doing, and suddenly, although the clients are booking in, actually it's a bit annoying because it doesn't feel quite so worthwhile, either compared to the new stuff that you want to do or just in terms of like the time for money exchange, because since you started, the chances are life has got way more expensive. And I've noticed too, I hadn't put my prices up in a really long time, and then some of the new practitioners in people building have started where I am already. So then I've had to put my prices up because they're kind of hot on my coattails. So I'm going to tell you a story that I've probably told you all before a long time ago. So this story goes back at least 15 years, and this is the story of when I was still working from home. Didn't have, certainly not this office, but I didn't even have my serviced office that I used to use before this one. And I'd started NLP4Kids, but we hadn't franchised. There wasn't even a we. I hadn't franchised it yet. But I'd probably designed the workshops and I was starting to see some one-to-one clients. Anyways, because I was being noisy on the internet, as usual, someone came across an NLP4Kids, a guy called Steve, who owns a company called the Therapy Lounge, which is still going, but he kind of scaled it back a few years ago. And in the beginning, it was a team of maybe 8 therapists in London at different sites, offering mainly hypnotherapy, but some other things like NLP and CBT and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he contacted me and said, we don't work with kids, so we're interested in bringing you on as a partner for when there are children. So we talked about that, and I said, you know, I work with adults as well. I don't want to take that off of the menu. So he said, well, we could start referring some work to you because really you're just sort of north of London, so there would be people. But we need to know what you charge because we're all kind of in the same pricing structure. So at that time, I had just put my prices up from £50 per session to 65. So I said to him, I charge £65 per session. And he said, oh, no, that is not going to work for us. And then I said, no, it's fine because I've literally only just put it up from 50. And he said, no, Gemma, you're not too expensive, you're too cheap. So they were all charging £150 a session, which for me was like, what? That's so much money. And which I say partly jokingly because some of you aren't even charging that right now, and this was 15 years ago. So he said, we'd need you to charge something closer to that. So I was like, okay then. And then I practiced saying £150 per session on a telephone call, like practice phone calls, and saying it costs £150 per session, except I couldn't say it because every time I did, my voice would crack. And I'd say, so I charge £150 per session. And I found that I could say 120 without my voice wavering and not being able to get the words out at the same intonation as I just said everything preceding it. So I went in at 120, and then I went to 150, then I went to 200, then I went to 50, and now for my adult work I'm charging 300, and I believe that's silent, and 250 for kids. So that's where I'm at right now. And I've got some other stuff that I'm looking to do this year, which will be more like a package thing, but it will put my prices up again. And I'm partly telling you that to hold myself accountable to actually getting it done. Anyways, moral of the story for you guys is, I started charging £120 per session 15 plus years ago, at a point when NLP4Kids didn't really exist yet. Like, there was no global franchise. It was me in the lounge of my bedsit writing a manual. Like, that's kind of all there was at that stage. And it was possible then, and it wasn't because of the brand really, although obviously Therapy Lounge, they kind of had their brand thing going on, so fine. Maybe a little bit because of the brand, but I was no more qualified then than any of you are now. I didn't have a master's in psychology at that time. I was a trainer of NLP, but no one cared about that. So, it wasn't, what's my point? My point is that it wasn't about where I lived, although I did have to get an office, a proper office. I couldn't sort of charge those prices when I was working from home, and that did make a difference. But now everyone's kind of comfortable with the idea of even doing stuff on Zoom, and I'm charging £300 a session for sessions that I do on Zoom. Yes, your credibility has a part of it, but you bought into a franchise so that you could buy into some of that credibility. So yeah, what's my point? My point is, maybe you need to think about putting your prices up. Maybe it's time. Maybe it was time a long time ago. And here's the thing. When I did it, the first client that called me after I'd done it, and I did it's £120 per session, said, no, that's too expensive. So I wasn't confident that it was the right move. And I still had a nanny job at that time. Like, I was only 1 foot into all of this. I was still in my transition, and I told the children that I nannied for what I was doing, and they held me accountable for making sure that the next time the phone rang, I would still say £120 and not backslide to 65. And the second person that rang, I said it's £120, and she said yes. So I had pretty much, like, all but doubled my fees because I made a decision to do it. Nothing changed really. Yes, I got the office, but I don't even think I had the office at the point that I told the new client, that it was going to be double the amount. And she didn't say yes, but have you got a serviced office in a Regis building? She didn't ask that question. So it was my psychology that changed it. I decided that that's what was going to happen, and I only got 50% over the line compared to what I used to get, but I didn't care because I was working half the amount for the same amount of money. And so maybe that might be useful to some of you if you're reaching a bit of a stage of saturation with your NLP4Kids work, where it's like, man, I still love this, but this mental health pandemic is coming in a bit thick and fast now. It could really do with this global anxiety crisis easing off, ideally. If you're experiencing some of that right now and you just want to manage the flow a bit better, then maybe it's time to start charging them more money so that you really filter out some of the ones that, sorry, that was really loud, so that you start to filter out some of those who can't afford you anymore and only work with the people that can. This is not about your location. This is not about your qualifications. It's not about the perception of it in your community, because that's just your belief anyway. It's about potentially finding a different audience, and I can promise you a whole lot more reliable, joyful audience for you to work with. So there we go, that's my thing. Now I'm going to just enjoy my walk and I'll be back at my desk in probably about an hour. Okay, bye.